Hi everyone. One question that came up early today was how can you potentially take extracts from free text and use them in quantifiable data? So the use case example was, can you actually take exit interview data that is normally kind of typed out by someone in the HR team who's conducting that exit interview and actually quantify it and actually turn it into metrics? And so what I thought I would do is do a quick demo to show you how I would think about maybe doing that using Gemini and all the built-in tools that are probably available for you if you're on G Suite or through one of the other existing platforms. So here's the high-level overview. It's a very simple dashboard. I didn't put too much effort into this. Kind of built this out in about 20 minutes. It showed you a workforce health snapshot. There's a few things that the CHRO might care about. If we look at exit rates, what are the main reason that people are exiting the organization? What is the average satisfaction of those leavers? Who'd recommend the company? What departments have a manager satisfaction below 3.5 or whatever metric we want to test? What is the most common next step in the move? And we'll come back to this dashboard, but I want to show you how I built it out. But ultimately, what we're doing is taking some text and generating all these insights where we would have otherwise had to manually code them. So let's go into the raw data and I'll show you what we're starting with. So let's assume that we have this set of exit interviews and we want to run some analysis over the top of it. I just generated this list using ChatGPT. So I had 25 employees here and we generated some random names, departments, roles, came up with some tenure, and then I just had ChatGPT generate a summary exit interview. Now, actually, if I was doing this in practice, I would probably take the full exit interview because there's going to be so much additional data that you can tease out from that. And what we're going to do is actually use this data and quantify in a form that's going to help us to actually gain insights from this. So it's not just high level, tell me why this person left the organization, but over 25, 50, 100, 1,000 different exit interviews, we can actually start to build out some trends. And so we're going to use the built-in Gemini AI function for this. It's very straightforward. If you've used ChatGPT, you already have the skills to do this. And so you can see how it's built out here, and you'll be able to see in the template, you can copy it and use it for yourself. But we have the exit interview summary here, and then I added these additional columns to the right-hand side. So primary reason for leaving, satisfaction. There's a couple of fields that I'm going to due to the nuance of Gemini, but this is hopefully going to help you to use the same kind of approach and actually get the right information that you need. So these are the fields, and I'll walk through each one. So the primary reason for leaving, this is a really important insight, and you can glean it if you read through all the different interviews. Maybe you can manually code why that's happening, but actually you can use Gen AI very simply and just write a very quick prompt that's going to give you that reason. So what this is doing is it's using this prompt here. So the function is equals AI. You can look at the documentation, but it's very simple. All you do is you do a prompt and then the cell that's applying that prompt to. So here's my prompt. I've identified the primary reason this employee left the organization. I gave it some categories because we actually want to create a finite number of categories to generate so that we don't come up with an endless list. And this is really important as you're thinking about quantifying the data. And then return only the category that best matches the text. Respond with only one of the listed categories, no punctuation or extra text. There's one cleaning element that we're going to do, and I'm going to cover how to do that, but everything else should be fairly straightforward. And so you want to set this prompt up to make life easy for you. So that's the prompt that I set up. And if I close this, and then all we're going to do is I can refresh. And what it's doing is you can see in the top right, generating the AI cell. So that's running the prompt on top of this cell, and it's chosen the career growth as the primary reason for this person leaving. If I actually read the exit interview summary, felt project scope narrowed too much, moving to a company with broader responsibilities. That is, I think, archetypal career growth definition. And so we've got some good insight from that. So we can actually scroll down a little bit and see one that's work-life balance. They're seeking a hybrid setup elsewhere. So they're actually saying that they didn't really like the team cohesion. They wanted more flexibility and collaboration. Work-life balance, it could be potentially something else. And this is where the nuance of the prompt is going to be really helpful. So as you start to look at your actual data, you can take some samples of the actual text and see if the categorization was correct. If not, you can actually adjust the prompt, apply it to everything. And eventually you'll get to a point where you're like 99% certain that the categorization that the AI has chosen would match the one that you chose if you were doing it yourself manually. Next one is overall satisfaction. So here you can see the prompts were just asking it to return only 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 based on the exit interview summary. This is kind of classic sentiment analysis, which is what the generative AI tools are really good at. So we're passing that information in, we're getting the overall satisfaction here. It's giving us a 4. And now the nuance with this, so we want to use these numbers as integers so that we can take averages. But when you use the AI function, that's actually going to output in text format. Now, no matter what you do, and I spent probably 5 minutes trying to fix this, just the column, you can set it to number or whatever you want. It's always going to output in a string. And so I'm not sure if there's a bug or a feature with Gemini, but a quick, simple fix for that is to actually just add a helper cell to the right-hand side, and it's just going to take the value of this number. So you see here, this is an integer, this is a number, this is a text format. And I'll show you why that's. Moving on, what would you rate the manager's satisfaction of this individual? So can we glean any insights from the exit interview as to how well that manager was serving them in that capacity? Now, obviously, there's more information you can get if you do a full voice survey, or you're doing this kind of annual analysis where you're getting upward feedback. You can actually feed a lot of information from that. And this same approach could be used as part of the performance review process, where you actually want to expand the data set that you've got, quantify things in a way that you can actually glean some insights. So I think that the use cases for this are potentially endless, but this is a very specific use case based on a conversation I had. Again, we're going to have to convert that number into an integer. You can see here some of them cannot be determined because in here there's no real mention of manager satisfaction. I could probably glean a better mentoring and upskilling programs. Whilst that's potentially a kind of high-level top-down recommendation, if I was reading that, I would potentially say, yeah, that probably implies that the manager wasn't doing a great job. But we're just using the kind of baseline one-shot summary from Gemini right now. So we've got that manager integer, and then the final one is new opportunity type. So based on the exit interview, can we glean where that person is going to go? Most of these are unknown, actually, because the actual exit interview summary is very small. Actually, in a lot of companies, this information is hard to capture. So you may need to go external and actually look at the LinkedIn profile of the person that left and then kind of manually code that, or you can actually use an agent for that if you're skilled to do that. But this is kind of like how we build out the data set. So you can see we've taken this one column of text and we've converted it into a number of different elements that we're going to then use to actually build some analysis around that. That's the data. I am a big fan of pivot tables. If you've seen any of my work, you'll see I normally just throw the data straight into a pivot table to see what I can find. In here, I have 5 different analyses, just very simple pivot tables built out to show initially attrition drivers by department, then average satisfaction by exit reason, manager effectiveness view, retention health dashboard, and then finally the talent destination mix as well. And this is what's going to give us our insights kind of moving forward. So attrition drivers by department, all we have here is, you can see if you click on the pivot table edit, we just looked at department, primary reason for leaving, employee ID. One of the nuances with the way I build pivot tables is that I always highlight all of the columns, the columns that we want, and all of the rows, but that always adds blank data into it. So I always add an employee ID filter. So filter on the unique ID, remove any blanks, and that's going to make sure you don't get any erroneous data. But aside from that, it should be fairly straightforward. You should be able to click through each of the pivot tables, understand what it is we're trying to do. So here we're just kind of counting the reasons why people are leaving by department. And this is actually going to be helpful to glean some insights. So just by looking at this kind of trend here, and we could actually turn this into the summary is kind of a percentage of the row. So we can see, 75% of people leave engineering because of career growth opportunities. That's a huge opportunity there for us to figure out how do we actually solve career opportunities and career growth in engineering in order to retain some of our people. And we can actually drill into this and see, were these actually people that we wanted to keep? Were they not growing in their career because they were underperforming? You can really kind of get into the weeds, but this is going to give you that high level number. Career growth is a big thing in people ops. Compensation is a big thing in product, main driver. So are we paying our product team enough to keep them? And so that could actually generate some additional analysis to try and figure out if we're paying against market. Could look at burnout in the sales team. That's pretty common. So are we doing enough there, or is this typical based on the type of work that we're expecting for these individuals? There's kind of a lot of information you can get from that. I'm going to just go back to default here. Same with average satisfaction by exit reason. We see that people who were burned out were really not very happy, and there were 6 of those. Career growth, they were reasonably happy. It's our biggest driver for And then everything else is kind of somewhere in between. When you're looking at a large sample size, this can actually be very insightful when you just start to drill down and look at individual kind of use cases. What I normally like to do is find the kind of top one or two contributors, then actually drill into the individual data and then try and identify the whole story behind that data. Like, why did these 12 people really get concerned about career growth? Is there something we could have done better? Maybe go and interview the managers and look at the performance review data and actually figure out, is there a trend there? Is there a narrative there that supports this? So that when you present this up to the CHRO, you can actually give some reasonable feedback. And manager effectiveness, here we can see where a manager is potentially underperforming. Actually, this is interesting, 2.8 on the product side, and our compensation is below market rate. So people are not happy with their managers. We're not paying them enough potentially. Are they saying they're not paid enough because that's the default? And actually, they're really just not happy with their managers. And so that's why they're leaving the organization. As a heads up here, one of the things we had to add as a filter was the manager interviewer to remove any blanks or error values here. So this is not going to be the full data set because we didn't have the manager score for every individual, but it's actually going to be directionally helpful. And obviously, the bigger the sample size, the more directionally helpful the information is going to be that you get out of the bottom. And then finally, retention health dashboard. Would you recommend the company? This is quite telling. So only 21 out of 25 people, sorry, 4 out of 25 people would recommend the company to a friend. That's a huge kind of opportunity gap. And so that's probably going to be something that if I was CHRO, I would really want to dig into and try and understand why are people not recommending. That's going to import our employer brand, which is going to hurt our ability to hire in the future. I look at average tenure, and we can see that people that would recommend have been here on average 6 months longer than those that wouldn't recommend. So we could start to figure out, is there a reason for that? Was there something that happened kind of 3.5 years ago? And since then, everyone that we've hired has been unhappy with the organization. Or again, this is all kind of directional signal information that you can then kind of dig into to get into the weeds. Finally, talent destination mix. This is not very helpful because 15 of the 25 people don't have destinations that we can use. 6 are going on sabbatical, 4 into a large company. Now, sabbatical is interesting because these are people that have left without a role to go to. And so if you actually dig into these, you can actually get some really insightful information. Like, these people have burned out and just like no longer want to be part of an organization. They need to take some time away, think through what's next. Is that an issue somewhere along the lines with the organization, or are we actually going to see more and more people like that moving forward? This is kind of high level information. If you're analyzing this, then you probably actually want to understand all the drivers. You can actually double click through to the underlying data and then take some spot checks, look at the HRAS, look at performance review data, just to get yourself comfortable with the reasons behind the metrics that you're seeing here. And then finally, the summary, I just built a very simple lookup function. I really like to build summary tables on top of pivot tables so that when you update the data, the pivot table updates, and then you update the summary table without having to rebuild everything. So if you need to make quick changes to the raw data, that's actually going to drive through everything else. And so these are probably 5 things that a CHRO might want to look at. I think what you would want for your specific use case is going to be different. And so that's the summary of it, but I hope that was helpful. Coding exit interviews takes a ton of time. It could take tens of hours. What I've showed you here is a way to actually use prompts to codify the data. But what's key is actually building the data structure that you need in order to run the analysis. You can actually use ChatGPT to help you figure out how to build that data structure. So kind of work backwards from what do I want to get out at the end and how am I going to use that? Then how do I need to build the data structure in order to get that information based on what do the pivot tables need to look like, and then what does the underlying data need to look like that I need? Do I have everything that I need in order to generate that? And then if I don't have anything, is there a way to get that? Whether that's pulling data in from a different source and joining it together with the data that you do have, or as you've seen here, using generative AI to interpret the data that you already have and convert qualitative into quantitative data. Hope that was helpful. Let me know if you want to see any more of this kind of content in the future. Drop it in the comments below and take care.